offerings that are available. And I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on building successful work relationships. I'm going to hand things over to our featured presenter today. He is Executive Leadership Coach and Professional Development Consultant, Mr. Brian Ackles. Brian, you now have the floor.
Kelly, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for joining us on this past the middle of July day, which is rather scary as the year races on. So let's jump into talking about what it means to build successful working relationships and some of the tools and some of the things that we can actually do to help promote this. So there are a few objectives that we got for the next hour or so to build an appreciation of why relationships at work are so important to both you and the organization. And this will be a rehash of things that I'm sure that we all already know. Begin the process of mapping the work relationship we've got and build on this concept of interdependence and understand the value of networking. And these are all really tied together. So let's jump into this. So fundamentally, we understand that work is driven by purpose. Right? There's a reason that we do the jobs that we do, and everybody understands, or everybody needs to have an understanding about why they're doing what they do. We think about what we do, we think about how we do it, and there's a purpose for it, whether we're creating something which is going to be used by somebody else in the organization to create something else, which will eventually service a customer, whether it's providing an environment for people to work in that is suitable for their work, building and maintaining tools for people to work with, providing and building products and services for end users. The list is endless. But the fundamental thing is there's a purpose, and your purpose serves somebody else in some way. There is no job that can be described as being completely and utterly on the individual. Even if you're a sole proprietor company, if it's only you working, the work that you're doing is benefiting somebody else. It's serving some purpose. So keeping that in mind, understanding what that benefit is and understanding how it helps other people really helps to understand why work relationships are so important. So relationships are all really about being effective and effective teamwork. So we all work with people, right? We all work within organizations, and the better that we work with people, the more effectively and efficiently the business will run, and the more effective and efficient our own work will be. If you're having challenges with people that you need information from, or that are part of your own supply chain within your work function, getting your work done can be a lot more challenging. So we strive to build relationships with people, and that doesn't mean that we're building strong friendships, but we're building professional relationships with people that enable us to get our work done. Right? So it's about building relationships to promote effective communication, and it also helps people understand each other better. So as you get to know people, and as you understand their place in an organization, their desires, their reasons for being there, you understand the context of how they work and why they work. And understanding this context helps us to understand how what we do affects other people. So if we're doing something which doesn't support somebody else's work, or doesn't support how they need to do things, that's not actually building the relationship. That's actually damaging the relationship you may have with that person or with that team. And it also helps us understand priorities, right? So again, the context will help you define how you're working with people and how you prioritize the work that you're doing with other people. And all of this will become a little bit clearer as we move on. So this is really about effect. So we want to be effective in what we do, and being effective means that we need people to understand why we do things. So we look at effectiveness as doing things in a way that has an all-around beneficial result. So everybody involved in what we're doing benefits by what we're all doing. So it's our results, it's the results of others. It's how the organization is viewed. It's how your function within the organization is viewed. Image, reputation, and again, the list goes on. So being effective refers to our attitudes, our mindsets, how we approach working with others. Are we demanding? Are we dictatorial? Are we working to strive to work in cooperation? So it's all about the how. And thinking about how we deal with others and how we deal with people within our organization really gets to the root of building a good relationship. Think about how you want to be treated when you're dealing with people in your organizations, and then flip that on its head and treat others the same way. Treat people the way that you would like to be treated. Nobody, you want to be, you will likely want to be collaborated with. You will want to have some inputs into decision making. You don't want to be just told what to do. We're professionals, right? We're hired to do a job because we bring something to the organization. So we like to work collaboratively with people in some way. We just don't want to be do this because I said so. We need to get this done. Here's their desire, why we're doing it. That is a conversation that we have with people, and that helps to build relationships with people. So every relationship that you build has value for you, has value for the other person, has value for the organization, has value for your team, has value for your customer. And it's about building and enhancing that value. And like the slide says, you're building a goodwill account with people. So working with people, building relationships, going out of your way to provide help to somebody that may not be directly something that which you're responsible for, but it helps to provide something for that person to look back on and say, yeah, no, they're willing to go the extra mile for me, so I'm willing to go the extra mile for them. So as you start building this goodwill within the organization and taking a real interest in other people and other people's work and other people's function, you start to find that you're viewed within the organization in a different way. You're viewed as someone who has a view of the organization, has a view across the organization, and you're not just narrowly focused on your own particular task and your own particular job. So it's showing that you're not being driven by self-interest. You're showing that you're willing to compromise. You're willing to work with others and to take in their viewpoints when you're having discussions and when you're trying to sort out how things are working within an organization. Now I'm going to stop here and just reflect a little bit on how important this really is and how critical it is for us to remember that everybody in the organization has a purpose and has value to how the organization functions. A very long time ago, when I first started in business, one of the gems that was shared with me, and this has been repeated thousands of times by many people, is that the most important person that you need to get to know when you first walk into any new company is the person that sits and meets the public as they're coming in and meets you as you're coming in. Whether that's a security guard, whether that's a receptionist, if that's how your organization functions, whoever is the person that the people see first and that you see first when you walk into the building. They're the people that front your organization. So if people are talking about the organization, this person has an incredibly important role to play. It may be, it's an administrative role typically. It may be a security role, and that's fine, doesn't matter. But these are the people that have a huge impact on how the public views and how your customers view the organization. The people that do the cleaning. I mean, we often see cleaners who, they're around our offices and they're very unobtrusive. Where I work in a full-time gig right now, our cleaner comes in around 3:30 in the afternoon, and she's a lovely, lovely lady. And she gets the job done, and she's so quiet and she's so unassuming, and she never will ask anything. But it's really important to me that I recognize that she does a very important job in keeping our office environment clean. Now, I work in an office, and I have my own office, and I have to lock the doors sometimes because of things that I've got out on my desk and what have you. But when I know that she's going to be there, and I know that I don't have to lock my office, I'll go up, make a point of saying thank you very much, and just to let you know, I've left my office open today. So if you are vacuuming, not please vacuum, but if you are vacuuming, you can vacuum in my office today as well. So she understands that I will tell her these things, and she respects that, and we have a good relationship. She's very quiet, but she plays a really important job. And the same thing can be said for everybody in the organization. From relationships you may have with the executive team to relationships that you may have with the people the administrative people, your peers, your managers, the people that report to you. All of these relationships have real value, have value to you, and when you build the relationships, build value to the organization. And this whole piece about building relationships is a really key workplace competency. This is a hugely underrated soft skill. Right? When you start in a new role, or when you start in a new company, or even if you transfer it to a different part of the company, how quickly you can build work relationships will have a direct impact on how effective you are at that role, at your new role, in your new position, in your new part of the company. The better you are at building relationships, the quicker you're going to be more effective, and the more value that you're going to be adding to both your team, yourself, and the organization, and ultimately your customers. So it is a skill, and it is something that we can practice. So we operate typically, and again, we come back to the fact that really none of us work alone. We operate in teams of some type or another. And those teams may be across the time, they may be across cultures, they may be different languages. There very likely will be different first languages involved across your teams now in this multicultural and multi-generational environment that we have. So we really have to work on how we communicate and how we build relationships across these different, I won't call them barriers, but different aspects of people that they bring to work. So you're not looking to build relationships only with people who are just like you. You're trying to build relationships with people who are different from you. And we'll talk a bit more about some of the challenges in that. Bottom line is, it's the responsibility of everybody in the workplace to build and maintain relationships. You have to know who people are. So, that being said, we understand about dynamics and behaviors, and some people, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to have conversations with people. And interpersonal dynamics come into play with this to say, how am I going to talk to this person, and why do I feel really comfortable talking to this person but not so comfortable talking to that person? And when we start thinking about how conversations happen and how we're interacting with people, we start to need to have an understanding about how sort of the behavior of social dynamics. So there's a theory called behavioral theory called transactional analysis, and we'll touch on it very briefly here. It's touched on a lot more deeply later in the full course, but it's really based on 3 ego states that we have as people. We have our parent mode, we have our child mode, and we have our adult mode. And I'll go through and we'll explain these sort of one by one. So our parent mode. So this is our taught concept of life, right? This is the voice of authority. And that voice of authority is something that we have learned from others. So we've learned from our parents, from our bosses, from our teachers, from our scout group leaders, from our youth group leaders, whatever, right? From people in authority, we have learned what authority is. We've learned a way of being authoritative, of being the parent. And then we have our child mode. And this is how we feel. This is our felt concept of life. So this is how we interpret things through our senses and through our emotions. So this is the opposite side of parent, if you will. So we're focused primarily now on in our child state on ourselves. This is a very self-centered thing. So then we've got the adult ego state. And this is how we learn about life. This is our learned concept of life. So this is the state that we get to, that we assess things before we act. We think about things. We understand how our emotions affect others and how our emotions affect how we feel. So self-aware adults, we manage our responses, we manage our emotions, and we manage how we talk to people. Self-aware adults will take a pause, will take a breath before responding to another person. They're very good listeners, but that's getting off topic. But you're self-aware. You understand how you react in situations. So keeping these three states in mind, there's really comes down to two types of power dynamics happen amongst these three ego states. You've got the parent-child dynamic, which is really about unequal power. So if you think about this in the workplace, this is the dictatorial boss who is authoritative and telling you what to do, has no recognition for your contribution, really. It's just you are the worker bee, you are the child, you are being told what to do because that's what the boss does. The boss tells you what to do and you go ahead and you do it. So there's a real clear unequal power dynamic here. Not healthy. This is not healthy for building relationships. So what we're trying to get to is the adult to adult dynamic, where again, you've got two self-aware people who are looking at each other with a level of respect, and they understand that they need to work well together. Now, the question comes into how do you change the model from parent-child to adult-adult? So if you're the child in the parent-child relationship, you change your reactions to those of an adult. If you change your reactions to those of an adult, the parent is then forced to respond as an adult because the power dynamic changes. And it takes time and it takes practice, but those types of changes, that type of dynamic can be modified. And it's not going to happen in one conversation. It's going to happen over a period of time. So don't expect that if you're in this unequal power balance and unequal power dynamic, that the next conversation with your boss is going to change things. No, you need to start moving yourself into that adult state over a period of time, and as thinking about how you're going to respond back to the parent that is that you're communicating with. You will find ways, and it will take some time. To help this, you always try and keep a very professional attitude. And this is very important when we're in the workplace. It's also very important when we're in generally on life in particular, but we bring an attitude of respect to the workplace. We have to respect the people that we work with. Now, that can be very challenging if the people we work with aren't suitable for the job. Then that's another issue about human resource management. But the people that we work with, that we work with on a day-to-day basis, we respect them, and by respecting others, they will in turn respect you. Your attitude, your professional attitude, is also helped by being reliable. If you say you're going to do something, if you commit to doing something, then when you need to deliver on it. That's the bottom line. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. Now, if there's always some give and take in all of this. If you say and you commit to somebody that you're going to do something, and you find that you will not be able to meet that commitment, and things have been delayed, being reliable also means that you tell the person that you committed to that things have changed, and that this is the new, this is why things have changed, and this is how it's going to be delivered now. So really, again, the professional attitude comes in with your results. What kind of results are you actually delivering within the organization? And all of these three tie together. So we've got the idea now of why work relationships are so important. We've talked about sort of transactional analysis in terms of parent and child, and the interconnectedness between respect, reliability, and results. So now we really start to move into the idea of and the concept of networking and building your relationships and building your network within an organization and also external to your organization. So again, we build this network. We don't just build a relationship with one or two people. We build a network of colleagues. We build a network of support within our organization, within our industry. So these become our very interdependent relationships, and they're many and varied. So again, they can be inside and outside your organization. So you have relationships with your vendors, with your suppliers. These are, again, part of your network. You're working with your suppliers. They have to deliver things to you so that you can act on those, use those products and services that you are receiving to build something for somebody else. You are building interdependent relationships within your own organization from people who you directly work with, who are giving you inputs to your role, or who are receiving the outputs of your work. You're building interdependent relationships with the executive team, with your managers, who are providing the guidance and the alignment to strategy within the organization. So all of these become relationships which you have to build and you have to work at. So some of the things that can help you do this is actually draw them out. Just draw out a simple diagram about what relationships you actually have. Work out with people, either with people directly or work out by yourself, how best to stay in touch with people. And when you start mapping things out, you'll start to recognize maybe where you have gaps in your network that you need to fulfill, that you need to fill in. So an example, just a very simple example, and this is a very simple way of graphing it. Just take a blank sheet of paper, put yourself in the middle, and just start building bubbles around you as who are the people that you have relationships or need to have relationships with at work. So as you build this map, it may become rather big, rather large, rather complex. Then start to think about how information flows between you and that person. Now, is it a one-way flow of information? And in that case, you'd only have an arrow going out from yourself to the external bubble, or is it a two-way flow of information? So if you're building that relationship with people, and really where you're seeing a one-way flow of information, that gives you some indication as to a relationship that needs to be worked on. If you're sending information to somebody, it's important to have some feedback from that person as to how they're acting on that information, how they're using that information, and is the information you're sending useful and usable to them? That's one way of looking at it. If somebody is sending information only to you and you're not responding to that, again, you need to look at that dynamic as well to say, okay, so I'm receiving information from somebody. One, do I need it? If I do need it, is it fit for purpose? And do I need to make sure that I continue to work with this person to refine the information that I'm getting, or refine the product or service, or whatever the relationship part is with this person? So you enter into a dialogue, and again, you build the relationship in whatever manner that you have to have. At the end of this mapping exercise that you're going to do for yourselves, you should have identified, well, one, where the gaps are, and also start to put a plan in place to build the relationships where you have challenges. Everything we do is interconnected. That's just the fact of our business life. We rely on many people to get things done. And the example is like a relay race, right? If you pass the baton to somebody and you drop it before it gets passed on, that has an impact on the person that you're passing to. If you pass a baton and they drop it, what do you do to help them? Do you go, oh my goodness, they dropped the baton, oh well? Or do you run up, pick up the baton and hand it to them again and help them out? So you think about that interdependence and interconnectedness that we're trying to build at work. So your success, all of the success around relationships and around building effective workplace relationships depends on building productive relationships. You know, the example that I often use with groups of people, and even within my own teams that I manage in the organization, is when you're dealing with projects. And a project comes to the end, and something new has been developed, and now it has to be supported by the organization. There's two ways to finish this. You can do the dump it over the wall, and hope like heck that the people that you're dumping it over the wall to can support it, because you have got to move on and you've got to get on to that next project. Or you can involve the operations and support people during the project so that when they come to the end, they're already supporting it, and you just gently remove yourselves and you go on to your next project work. Now, there's always going to be some struggle in the organization in terms of resource and what you can do, but I don't know about you, but I much prefer the smoother transaction where I've got good relationships with people in the operations side and the support side of an organization, and we transition comfortably the new product or service to the support and operations side of the group, and we don't just dump it over and say, all right, we're done, here it is, there's a bunch of manuals, you guys can read them, I'm sure you're smart enough to sort it out, I got to move on to my next project. That is not a productive relationship. So all of this comes back, and again, relationships, networking, interdependence, comes down to the team. We talked at the very beginning of this about you as an individual having a purpose in the organization. The team also has a purpose in the organization. Your team has a reason for existence. I have 4 teams of people that I manage right now, and each team has its own reason for being in existence. Now, there's cross-pollination between the teams, of course, because it's still under one umbrella of responsibility. But each team understands why they exist and what they're supposed to do. Now, that understanding might be implicit or explicit. So it might be that you're having to, the team has come together for a project. And that would be a more, you're defining explicitly why the team exists. And the team exists for a project team to deliver something new and unique, which is what a project is. Now, it can be implicit in such that it's an ongoing support team. So it's implicit in within the understanding of the team that they're there to support the network elements or services which are generally their responsibility. Within the team, of course, everybody has their own purpose, and everybody has their own purpose for their job, as we talked about at the beginning. But in order for the team purpose to work, all the individual purposes, if you will, all the individual contributors within the team have to support the team purpose. So all of this really is to say that teams need to obviously work interdependently. Everybody has to work with everybody else. Work flows through the team and around the team. And again, because work flows through the team and around the team, emotions will also flow around the team. So on being able to understand and look at emotions, look at how the team is working, look at this through the view and through the lens of transactional analysis. Look at the types of communications which are taking part within the team. Is it parent-child? Is it adult-adult? And if it's a parent-child interactions within your team, as a team leader, as a manager, you can start to try and massage those types of conversations to get them into a more adult-to-adult relationship. So you start to see all of this starts to tie together. So people, right? So we've talked about teams, and we've talked about team purpose, and we've talked a little bit about emotions, and we've talked about transactional analysis, and we really fundamentally comes back to people. Right? We work with people. And the question here is, do we view people as difficult or do we view people as different? Generally, and I would say not all of the time, but very much of the time, the majority of the time, people in the workplace are well-intentioned. Right? They're not there to sabotage your work. Yeah, there may be one or two people that are like that in an organization, and there always will be. But generally, people are well-intentioned, and they want to do their job well, just like we do. Right? We want to do our jobs well. We're at a place where working, we enjoy the work that we do. Now, because people approach work differently, and they have different styles of work, their style might not match to our style. And if we get a definite mismatch, we might see those people as difficult. Right? They're loud, they're arrogant, they're bossy. We're not. And your style might be that you're more consensus building. You're more cooperative. You don't get this whole drive to we're dead concept. But that's not difficult. That's just different. So we have to start to look at people's styles and understand that it is a difference and not a difficulty. If we think that somebody is being purposely difficult, the human brain is wired to very, very simply. If we see something that we believe to be true, we will make sure that it becomes true. And that's the fundamental definition of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we see somebody as being difficult, and if we're convinced that they're being difficult, we will look for everything that they do to justify our opinion of them being difficult. This is an extraordinarily hard thing to break out of. So it's really important when you start to not get into that cycle, is when you start seeing somebody and you think, oh my goodness, they're being extraordinarily difficult today. Are they, or are they just different from the way that we do things? We can't change other people. Okay? You cannot force somebody else to change. But you can change your way of dealing with other people. You can change your view. You can change the way you think about them, right? It's like, I don't know, it's like buying cereal. You go to a store and you're presented with I don't know, 50 different brands or tastes or kinds of cereal in boxes in the cereal aisle of a supermarket. And some of the boxes are very flashy and they draw your eye in, and that's about graphics marketing. And then there might be a sort of a plain box which really isn't very attractive. And you might not try that because it's not very attractive. It doesn't really reach out and grab you. But that's might be the box of cereal that's going to be the best thing for you in terms of your health, in terms of not eating junk, reducing sugars, and all that stuff. But we don't gravitate to it because it's different than what we're used to. So this creates, think about this in the people context. If they're different from you, it creates a gap, and we're trying to find ways to bridge that gap. So to find ways to bridge the gap, we have to understand our own personal styles. So our personal style and understanding that helps us understand our own behavior in certain situations. If we understand our own behavior in situations, then when we enter into situations with other people, we can understand where they're coming from. It's like putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. So if you understand their style and you understand your own style, you can look for ways to bridge that gap. Now, one of the truths about all of this is that we learn more from people who are different from us than we learn from people who are similar to us. You think about that for a second. If you surround yourself with people who are the same as you, what are you learning? You're learning, you're confirming your own beliefs. You're confirming how you work. You're confirming that what you feel is true. Now, if you look at people who are different from you, and again, understanding they're not being difficult, they're just different from you, you can see potentially the benefits of what they're saying and how they're doing something, and how they build relationships. Not that you need to change to be them, but you can grab nuggets from them and you can learn from them on how to build relationships both with them and with others who are, I won't say the same as them, but others who are different from you. So this helps you learn more. So there's kind of 4 different styles that we'll talk about briefly here. And they basically go on 2 axes, the high assertiveness to low assertiveness axis and the low expressiveness to high expressiveness axis. So you start off with direct people, spirited people, and these are people that are more in the highly assertive side. And then you have the systematic style and the considerate style. So the considerate style are people that are building consensus, right? They're working with others. You're very considerate of how other people feel. You're very considerate of their workload, of their time commitments. So you're very highly expressive about that. But you may not be as assertive about your own requirements and needs if you are purely on that considerate quadrant within the style matrix. So we'll go to the opposite corner. So we'll go to the direct quadrant. So you're highly assertive. You are very good at telling people what you need, telling people that this has to get done, but you're not very good at expressing the why. You're not very good at expressing and understanding the emotive content of what you're doing. So then let's go to the systematic person, the systematic style. The systematic style is really, as the name describes, you're going through things piece by piece by piece, and you're analyzing how things work, what needs to get done, that you're creating the logic behind it, and you're creating a map for yourself. So you're not really, you might be trying to engage other people, but you're engaging with them only in one aspect, which is the aspect of trying to engage with them logically and systematically. You're not appealing to their emotion. You're not you're not highly expressive in how you deal with people. And then you come to the spirited side, highly assertive and highly expressive. So these are the people that are out to do good. They're out to do great things in the world, and they're go-getters. They're cheerleaders within the organization. They want everybody and everything to be great, which is fine, but they also need to rein that in, because being the spirited person, highly expressive and highly assertive, can leave the logic and the systematic behind, can clash directly with the direct side, direct style people, because the direct style people don't have this whole, rah spirit behind them. They just want to get stuff done. And the considerate people, well, they'll support the spirited person because they're sort of on the same role of the highly expressive, but the spirited person may run rampant over the considerate person's feelings or needs or desires. Now, every time you present something like this in a quadrant, everybody wants to immediately say, well, I'm direct. No, I'm considerate. No, I'm systematic. I'm spirited. No individual is one of these things. You have tendencies towards different areas on different styles, and understanding your tendencies, your own tendencies, helps you understand the advantages and disadvantages of that style, and also understand how you can interact with the other styles. There's a lot more depth around this, as you can well imagine. So moving on. So, relationships, it's about communication, it's about results, and we've already talked about this. Trust-based relationships are based on mutually beneficial outcomes. And what we're trying to build all the time is trust-based relationships. We're dealing with communication, which is high quality, so we're transmitting and receiving information that we need to have and that the other person needs to have. And these trust-based relationships really deliver extraordinarily high and superior results. So let's finish off with a brief talking about pure networking. Pure networking is not just socializing in the work environment. Pure networking has a purpose, right? You need to make connections within your organization, not just socially over lunch and not just around, grabbing a coffee with people. So you're trying to build business connections, develop contacts and relationships that deliver new knowledge and also help you create greater influence within the organization, because it's your influence within an organization that's going to help you get stuff done. So we build networks to support our ability to deliver, supports our long-term career goals. I've built networks for years. I made it a passion really to go out and meet as many people as I can, talk to as many people as I can across industries, across social boundaries, across cultures, to try and understand, one, what they're doing, how that impacts myself, my career, but also the organization that I'm working with, the technology that we're implementing or the service that we're creating. And throughout the years, I've gone back to my network to look for help on certain things. And where I've gone back to my network, people have always been able to give me something. And I've had my network come to me, and again, not just to me, but they're looking to their network to say, I need some help on this. Can anybody shed some light on something? And if I can, I will. If I have something of value to add, I will certainly help somebody else out. Every connection we make is an opportunity for someone to be referred to us. It's an opportunity for us to take on greater responsibilities, and it's an opportunity for us to look to see that next opportunity, whether it's inside or outside your own organization, or that next opportunity with a potential new customer. All of this become the benefits of really strong, purposeful networking. So we're building, again, authentic relationships. We're building real relationships with people, and we're building relationships that have a benefit to somebody else. So one of the things I see when people first start networking is they come up and they introduce themselves, and it's very professional and it's very respectful, and they start telling that person what they can do for them. This is exactly the opposite of what effective networking should be. When you're trying to build and meet somebody new, and even if you're at a coordinated, like at a purpose-designed networking environment or networking function, you go up and you talk to people. You introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Brian Ackles. I've got my own consulting company in project and business analysis. What do you do? Tell me a bit about yourself. And you start to understand where they're coming from, and they'll tell you what challenges they might be having. And don't try and solve it during the event, but just say that, that's great. It's really interesting what you're doing, and you start talking about what they're doing and express interest in what they're doing. Express interest in what their challenges are. And if somebody comes up to you and introduces themselves to you, and they ask you the same question, don't talk about how you can benefit them. Talk about the challenges that you're seeing, or talk about the work that you're doing. Talk about the customers that you've got, or the successes, whatever. Don't focus it on trying to sell yourself or sell what you have to somebody else. You're trying to build relationships. So understand what your network members need from you and what you need from your network, and understand the value. How can I contribute value to my network, and what value can my network offer me? All of this starts to come into play. It also helps to understand and enhance your reputation. Your network will most definitely share information about you. They'll talk about your personal style. They'll talk about how influential you are. And your reputation will spread. You need to take responsibility for your reputation and decide how you want to be perceived by others. And this is, when you're networking with people, when you're building your networks, you take ownership and you influence what descriptors that you want people to use about you. you influence what your authentic characteristics are that you want them to notice. Now, you can't fake a characteristic. So you want people to understand the real you, and you need to decide which part of the real you that you want enhanced as part of your reputation. So you need to find ways that they're going to do that. And one of the easiest ways about creating descriptors and authentic characteristics, or not creating them, but getting people to understand them, is to live them. Right? So if you want to be known as reliable, that's as a descriptor, be reliable. If one of your underlining authentic characteristics is you're very compassionate, well, show your compassion if that's what you want to have enhanced as part of your reputation. If you want to be known as, if one of your characteristics is being very helpful, then be very helpful. Your network will see this right away. So you can ensure that these things happen simply by doing the things that support the descriptors and support the characteristics that you want people to see in yourself. If you don't do that, people will make their own decisions, whether they're right or wrong. So really, this is important that you take ownership and take responsibility for your reputation so that you have an effect on others, a positive effect on others. So a quick checklist for reputation management. Be honest, be consistent. Speak your values and live your values. It's not enough to say, yes, I'm trustworthy, and then be untrustworthy. Keep your commitments. Speak well of others. Don't gossip. Don't spread rumors. Be supportive. Share. Share everything that you have with people that you can. Obviously, there are certain things that you can't share with people, and that's fine. But share what you can with people. And be clear how you want to be perceived. I would like to be known as the person that helps the organization get things done collaboratively. You can be clear and say that, and then people will look at you and say, well, yeah, no, I can see that in you. And as you demonstrate that fact, again, you will be known as that person who gets things done by working collaboratively. So we foster collaboration, right? And again, we're developing positive relationships. We're working with people who are uncomfortable to work with. We're finding ways to adapt to their style. And we understand that our purpose and our actions have an impact on others, and that we need to understand that impact and also engage in behaviors that have a positive impact, that build trust and demonstrate respect, and also build and foster collaboration. We don't want to be the person who goes into an organization and won't work well with others, because organizations need people to work well with others, or organizations themselves don't work. So find ways to foster this collaboration. Act with integrity. Say what you mean. And again, mean what you say. Be transparent. Maintain your confidentiality as appropriate. We've already spoken about this. Know your own values. Understand what your values are. Right? If you don't, and if you can't, if they're not clear, write them down, and they'll become clear as you write them down. Behave consistently and predictably. If you're all over the map, people won't know how to deal with you. And demonstrate the congruency between intent, your words, and your actions. So what you intend to do, the words you use, and the actions that you actually take, those things have to be in line. And that's really acting with integrity. And that, again, goes back to your networking, goes back to building relationships and building the teams. When you're dealing with different people, and you're dealing with people for the first time, create a working agreement. Now, this isn't a document that you're going to write and say, we're going to work together in the following manner, and you bullet point out a bunch of things. Just talk to people about how you want to work together. Okay, I communicate like this. I prefer to send emails on things. And the person that you're working with, the new person might say, well, I'm not really good with emails. I actually work with instant message. It's a lot easier for me. Emails are great if something I need to dig my teeth into something. So you can keep that in mind if you want to have a quick interaction with them. Send them an instant message. Understand how things will go back and forth. You can ask for them to do things for you. You can ask, and they will ask you to do things for them. And that becomes the de facto agreement about how you're going to work together. And it will change and it will modify over time. But talk about this with people. Understand that the agreement is something that you can create and you can talk about how you're going to work together. So final words. If you work, you need to develop and maintain relationships to be effective. Fundamentally true. All relationships have value. It takes work to build and maintain these relationships. It's not something which is easy. They don't just happen. There's nobody that is a natural at building relationships. It takes time and it takes effort. Take the time to map your work relationships. And again, you might be surprised at the results. And one thing I will add to this is don't just do this once. Do this regularly, because your relationships within your working environment will change. So it's worthwhile to update your map and change your map as the workplace ebbs and flows and as you move through your career. And finally, bottom line, network, but do it with integrity. You're doing it to enhance the value that you have to offer to people and also how you help other people. So with that, I will say thank you for taking the time with me today. It's been very much appreciated, and we hope to see you again and talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Brian, for joining us today. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us on today's webinar. If you have any questions for Brian, we're going to stay on the line for a few more minutes. So feel free to type those into the questions menu option and we'll get those addressed over audio. I also want to point you all to our website at newhorizons.com. There you will see a link to our Center for Leadership and Development, and you'll find all information on this upcoming course. You can also reach out to your local New Horizons for any information. And if you don't know who your local New Horizons is, just go to newhorizons.com, type in your zip code, and you can do a zip code search for the center nearest you. Also, a quick reminder that we will be sending out a link to view today's session recording, as well as a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation for you to review or pass on to any colleagues who were unable to join us. And Brian, we do have a couple questions. The first one is, oftentimes when saying they are willing to do more for me, it leads to let's make them do even more so I can do less. For those people who are the ones always willing to do more, how do they handle this?
So if people, for those people that are always willing to do more, it's also coming up to also having a clear understanding of what you're actually capable of doing. And the challenge is for people that are always willing to do more is to learn how to say no, or to learn to enter, or to have the discussion with somebody. Said, you know, I would really love to help you, but I've got the following thing. You know, I've got these things that I'm already on top of. I may have time later. You know, you would know for your own self what later would be, whether it's next week, next month, next year, to help you out with that if that's suitable. But right now, I'm absolutely swamped. I just can't take anything else on. So it's trying to find a way to enter into that dialogue respectfully, and being able to professionally say no.
All right. And what recommendations do you have for difficult relationship with a boss? There's drastic personality, especially when there are drastic personality differences.
Yeah, I guess this comes back to the root of, you know, is it a difficult boss or is it just a different boss? And this is, you know, personality differences really comes down to difficult or different. So it's really, again, understanding the power dynamic of from a transactional analysis perspective. It's a parent-child relationship, or if it's an adult relationship in that respect. But it's just a difficulty in difference in styles. You have to find a way to understand what their style is, what their communication style is, what their thinking style is, what their work style is. Try as best you can to adapt to it. And see how that works. Because once you start adapting to somebody else's style and they see that it becomes you are becoming more effective in communicating with them, they may start to adapt their style as well. And you may be able to open up the possibility of having a conversation about style and a conversation about that relationship with that difficult or demanding or very different boss. It's a tough question.
It is, and I have one that goes right along with it. How do you work with a boss who is unqualified for their position and doesn't know how to work with their team member? It's along the same lines, so I'm sure answer might
Ooh,
be similar.
yeah. Well, it is along the same lines, and I guess that the challenge is if you have somebody that is actually truly unqualified for the position, and they aren't able to, and they're just failing the team. There's a couple of hard things that can be done. One is that this is if you have relationships with people in other parts of the organization, you can discuss that with them. You can also, work with your boss to help fill in the gaps where they may be falling down, and it almost becomes you become the trainer for your boss. You try and help them learn how to do their job better. Now that's taking a lot on yourself, and depending on how your boss views the world, they may or may not accept that. They may feel that they have got all the skills and talents in the world, but and if they don't, then that can backfire on you. So it's really very situationally dependent. You can, as I said, I would first try and work with my boss to try and educate them on what they need to do better. And again, it's trying to find that power dynamic, trying to find the ability to have those authentic and very professional conversations with them to say, how can I help you do a better job with your leadership, with your team?
All right, great. We're getting a lot of questions coming in. Real quick, for anyone who's signing off, also wanted to let you know that there will be a survey once you sign off, so we'd appreciate any feedback you have. Just please provide it in that survey. It takes about a minute to fill out, so that'd be great as well. Okay, Brian, we have a couple more questions. How do you work with someone who undermines your relationships with other coworkers, especially when this person is a supervisor?
If they are truly undermining your relationship with other coworkers, I would actually have a conversation with that person and try and understand why. And also, the other part of this is also continue to work with your coworkers, and make sure that you are managing your own reputation with them. And it goes back to what we talked about near the end of the webinar. So you are responsible for your own reputation. So work with your coworkers, make sure that you are maintaining your reputation with them by being the person that you want to be. If you can have the conversation with your supervisor about why they're undermining you, and again, I wouldn't use the word undermining with them, but just have a discussion with them about how they see you fitting in with the team. That may lead you to other conversations with them as well.
All right. And what are your suggestions on keeping in touch with those people that you have networked with, but their role isn't immediately interactive with yours? And that way down the road, whenever you need help, you still have a strong enough professional relationship with them to reach out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best ways and one of the best tools I use for this is LinkedIn, and arguably it's the way that I keep in contact with almost all of my network. And one of the things with LinkedIn is to use that as a platform to share things that are of professional interest to you, professional interest to the industry that you're working in. And as you share things, or as you add content into LinkedIn, your connections on LinkedIn will actually see this and know that you're still within the industry, etc. Otherwise, you're trying to send out messages to everybody all the time, and you'll do nothing else but constantly maintain contacts with people. Look for opportunities, when you're at conferences and where you're at different trade shows or industry events to get to say hi with people, sit down, have a coffee with them, etc. Many different varied ways of doing it.
Okay. And what advice can you give to those people who live abroad or took cross-cultural training and are used to working in a multicultural environment? How would they deal with such things as when if certain companies say, we do it this way, in America, or we do it this way with our company because that's the way everybody does it. And they're more closed-minded and accepting other ways of behaving and working.
Well, I guess that really comes down to you're having to adapt to company culture of where you're working. And really, for people that have had cross-cultural training and they've had multicultural experience, it's almost really no different than when you've moved into another culture. Coming back to your own culture can be difficult because you've had a broader experience and a broader viewpoint. But if you're told explicitly that this is the way we do things around here, you have two choices. You can, accept that and start working within that environment and try and introduce new ways of working slowly and gently. Or you can make other choices and look for employment and look for a situation which is more suitable to the experiences that you've had.
All right, and that's going to conclude today's session, everyone. Thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you, Brian. We always love having you come presenting on behalf of New Horizons.
My pleasure.
All right, and thanks again, everyone. I'd like to recommend that you guys all contact your local New Horizons for further information on all of our Center for Leadership and Development course offerings. And don't forget to give us our feedback in that survey right at the end of the session. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.